to another camera class. Today is the third camera class of the month, which would make today the the advanced cameras class. Pull that up. For all of you who are new to this, maybe this is your first time joining one of our classes, my name is Saxon. I'm one of the teachers here for Apple Electronics. I specifically teach the camera class. We teach this every Thursday from 5:30 to 7. Just to give everybody at home an update, next week is Thanksgiving, so we'll be having the class on the 24th, which is Monday. This upcoming Monday, the 24th, will be beyond the traditional camera class. So just to kind of go back over everything we've talked about, the Intro to Cameras class was our beginner class in the sense of what we talked about. We talked about where buttons are on the camera, what those buttons do, how to save photos, how to make sure we take the photos off the SD card and download them properly. And then we touch on lenses, proper ways to hold your camera, etc. The second class, the intermediate cameras, we break down more of the control of the camera via non-automatic settings. So the goal is to get you away from automatic so we can start using manual controls. The manual controls are there to help us use the camera as a tool. So we really lean heavily into learning how to manipulate the camera on a manual level. Advanced photography, we're going to get away from all of that. We're not really necessarily here to talk about how to use the camera as much as we're going to talk about the more fundamental basis to both taking a photo and editing your photo. Afterwards, I have a list of some more advanced accessories that I might recommend if you're really starting to get into this territory with video and for photo. And we'll also talk a little bit about content creation. So let's go into tips for taking great photos. I've divided this into two different sections. One is going to be object photography, whether that is pictures of things or just items in general, or portrait photography, as it's typically called. The other one is then going to be landscape photography, or architectural can be used in this case, but again, both are the two opposite sides of the coin. Starting with portrait photography, some of the most basic and fundamental ideas within photography all latch onto portrait photography. Portrait photography as the whole is one of the more fundamental and starting routes of photography. Very easy to take pictures of people, but if you could take pictures of people, then taking pictures of objects, things, belongings, things of this nature will be easy to do if you follow simple guidelines and rules. Starting by filling the frame. What we're doing in this photo is getting rid of negative space. Space within the photo that doesn't help the photo at all, it takes away or detracts, are things that we can get rid of. Going from the left image to the right image, you can see the molding and the area of the walls that are taken away and edited out of the photo by simply cropping in. Doing this not only takes away the distracting parts of the photo, but it brings our attention to the main subject, which is this woman and her portrait. This could be great for a resume or a LinkedIn page or something of professional sort that you might need in order to advance yourself. The eyes are typically, in the world of portrait photography, some of the most important attributes to focus on. Eyes in the top third of the image brings in a lot of focus and a lot of information into the camera, but it also just helps in general keep the viewer's gaze in focus. In this case, you can see that the eyes typically, or in this image, the eyes are hitting on the top third. Eyebrows are also in the top third. And where we're getting this top third of the image is if you look at the white bars that are separating, there is a top, a middle, and a bottom section of the photo. A natural way for humans to look at something is from top to bottom or bottom to top. Therefore, keeping the eyes one of the more interesting parts of a portrait in complete focus really helps keep the viewer's gaze at bay. If failing to get the eyes in there, the eyebrows also could go in the top third. Again, it helps reading a portrait up to down or down to up. The eyes naturally rest in the top portion of the human face and body. Therefore, showing them in this nature really does help. When all else fails, though, the eyes are always the #1 target to focus in on when it comes to humans. And the reason being is that most cameras have advanced software when it comes to eye recognition technology. And this both goes for humans and for animals. So if you're taking pictures of birds or wildlife, humans, or the like, you're going to notice that your camera automatically wants to lock onto the eye. So use that to your advantage. The eyes are an expressive part of the human body, but they're also a natural thing that the camera wants to lock onto. Years ago, cameras suffered from red eye, where when you would take videos or photo, the flash was so intense that it would create this red circle in the eye. Technology nowadays has made it where red eye is nearly impossible, but the best way to get rid of red eye was actually learning how to lock in and focus in on the eyes of the person. Now, portrait photography, as far as focusing in on the eyes, is one attribute. The other attribute is knowing your audience and the height of their audience. Using a trick simply as getting on their level, is the way I call it, is simple. A photo like this is candid, it's fun. This might be a fun one that you show your kids one day. You've got one boy look like they're biting the girl's arm. People are being silly. They've got streamers and little like blow toys. Cake is on the table. Everything looks fun like it should. But simply, by lowering your point of view and dipping yourself downwards, you can get something that's a little bit more artistic and a little bit more professional. By using the settings we talked about last week in the intermediate class and focusing in on things like aperture and shutter, you should be able to create something that looks somewhat more cinematic, but also demonstrates something similar to what the other photo had, which is the fun and silliness of a birthday party that we see going on. This photo, though, however, relies on a couple of our different rules. Eyes and the eyebrows are in the top third of our image. We have good depth of field within the image. The background is showing slight blur, but not enough blur that we can't see that there's a fun party going on. At the same time, too, we're on the same level as the children, so we're not shooting down at them. Naturally, doing stuff like this helps to create a more stimulating and more provoking image. Whether or not you're trying to get that out of the image, it's a good way of drawing in your looker's gaze. Now, I talked about the eyebrows being in the top third of the image, but one of the simplest and most used rules in photography is the rule of thirds. If you were to go online today and look up fundamentals of photography, rules of photography, you'll see hundreds of different shapes that look similar to this, that have swirls, X's, patterns, all sorts of stuff that's meant to be visual guides for photographers in order to get a composed image in a way that provokes or hits at a viewer's soft spots. The rule of thirds is one of those rules, but if done correctly, it's one of the most popular and one of the most used rules out of the bunch. The idea behind the rule of thirds is that where those red circles are in your image, if you can have the main subject hit within those red circles, you're going to create a more stimulating and provoking image to the viewer. I'm using a lot of water themes in this one, but we can see in this image exactly what I mean. First and foremost, our horizon line. Horizon line is given its name, and it's the space in which the your background and your foreground meet. So, where the sky meets the water and land, that is our horizon line. If you look at the horizon line, it's almost at the same exact area as the top line of our rule of thirds. So our horizon line is automatically at a perfect height and is beautiful. Mix in this subject matter of having this nice sunset coming down, reflection from both the water and the sand. There's then the surfer standing in the middle to block out the intensity of the sun. Not only is he hitting the rule of thirds, but his shadow is then dropping and also hitting at the rule of thirds. Again, we have this little girl on the one side, her shoulder and her ankle are hitting both of the rule of thirds markers. There's the water in the background with, again, this beach. We don't see that shadow and that intensity anymore, but the sky looks very ominous. There's sun breaking through the clouds, but the black and white filter that's on this image gives a good amount of detail and texture. On top of that, too, your horizon line is hitting at the top third. The image overall just looks really nice. Now you might be asking yourself, why not cut away excess negative space? And that is true. We could do that in this image. However, there is something to be said about the seaweed and all this other kind of gross stuff that's on the floor by where this photo is being taken. Another good example, you've got mom and dad, brother and sister. Both are hitting at the rule of thirds. Both are a little bit different. But another perspective that we have in the photo is bringing the children closer up and having the parents further back. We're creating a discrepancy in the height of these two. And by doing that, we give the kids a little bit more of a platform to stand on, making them look larger even though they are much shorter and smaller than their parent equivalents. And lastly, in the portrait category, we have the picture of Jim. Jim is hitting the rule of thirds nicely. His eyebrows are on the top third of the image. And this is another one where, for example, using that idea of getting rid of excess negative space in a lot of these scenarios is important. It helps cut away the filler, the stuff we don't need, the stuff that distracts from an image. However, all rules in photography are meant to be broken. And there are certain rules that apply that you'll see in certain circumstances that you won't see in others. And I think this is a nice example because not only are we not getting rid of the excess negative space, but we're keeping it there to show the viewer where exactly we're at. If you're familiar with the office as a whole, then you'll know that this was technically the conference room. You can see the white shades there, the tree, and how that all kind of fits together. By keeping that there, we build the space of where the character's at when they're being interviewed. Therefore, there is a purpose behind having it in the show. Whereas if it was just a regular portrait we were trying to take, while the eyebrows are hitting at the right spot, the rest of the image has negative space that we probably don't need in order to show off the photo as a whole. So again, while all these rules are helpful and they're meant to be tools to make your photography even better, all rules in photography are meant to be and can be broken. Moving away from portraits, let's move into landscape. Now, just like portrait can also apply to taking pictures of objects, things, or belongings, landscape photography, architecture photography all work in a similar tune. The idea in the world of landscape photography is typically the horizon line to start. Knowing where your horizon line is at all times is an important aspect of photography because it'll explain a little bit more about light distribution and how the way that land works. When looking at an image like this, we can clearly see that our horizon line is going to be where the background meets our foreground. In a scenario like this, the coastline, where the water and the trees are meeting, is going to be our space of a horizon line. We cannot see the tops of the trees. Technically, we are looking at the trees perfectly, and then we are looking up towards the mountains. Whereas with the water, we're not looking from below the water up, we are looking at the top of the water. The water and this area of ice and foreground are all things that we are technically standing on or looking down at. Whereas the mountains and the trees of the background are things that we are looking straight at or looking up at. If you can understand that relationship, then it's very easy to figure out and pinpoint where your horizon line is. And by keeping the horizon line in thought, you should be able to position it in a way where then the photo reflects that. So where they have the positioning of this, you have this beautiful sky that is showing really well, clouds, overcast. The water, though, doesn't have a single ripple in there and reflects the mountain perfectly. There's that juxtaposition, that symmetry within the photo, and the horizon line being located where it's at helps elevate what we're seeing in the image. Now, the horizon line is one aspect of the image, but balance and symmetry also come into play. Here we have a tree directly in the center of the image. That's the balance that it's holding. The symmetry comes from the fact that there are these lines that are moving towards the tree in between the lilac or the lavender. There's this unexpressed chaos behind the fact too, with the thunder and the lightning coming down. So you have the kind of randomness of that mixed within this balance and symmetric layout of the plants. It's a nice, stimulating, easy to look at photo. Same idea with this one. Not only do we have a horizon line which separates the water from the mountains, but we have a nice thing of balance and symmetry happening in this one. The trees in the dead center mixed with our brush and shrub that are off to the left and the right side. You also have the water, which is reflective in this photo. And again, not a ripple is in sight, so the water is perfectly still and even, mixed in with a very clear and blue sky too. And one of the last ones, not the most good-looking photo, but I think this one shows it off really well, of the balance and the symmetry that's happening in this one. The yellow line cuts all the way down throughout the entire image, giving us two nice equal halves to this photo. Now, a small tip, but one that I also always like to talk about, is lighting. Lighting is extremely important for your images. Without light, we don't have photos. So keeping the sun at your back while you're taking photo and video can be a good move, but depending on what you're doing, you might want to open yourself up more to light. What makes the two photos different is a factor of two different things. It's ISO and positioning. With the bad photo, we have a fish directly in front of our model's face. Hat is cocked backward or downwards, and there is no light escaping. The light is on the back of our subject matter. However, by simply moving the fish out of the way, pushing the hat back up, and adjusting our ISO to pick up more light, you can see the difference between the bad and the better, and how much more illuminated or well lit our subject matter is. So by simply allowing more sunlight to pour into the image, and then bumping our sensitivity up so that the sensor can take in more light will help. Moral of this story is that the sun is your best friend when it comes to photography, and you should learn ways to control and manipulate the sun to help your photos get the best look they can. Now, before I talk about the steps to editing your photo, let's talk about the difference between a JPEG and a RAW file format. You can see that between the RAW, the JPEG, and the processed RAW, what we're looking at here. The RAW file is muted, it looks flat, it doesn't show a lot of color. Our JPEG shows more information, but still isn't as robust and as powerful as the processed RAW is. You see more of the rosy complexion within the skin, the shirt, you can see the wrinkles clearly and exactly where all that is lined up. The guitar has more color to it, the hair shows more volume, more color, and the reason being is that we took a photo that was raw, and we processed it. We went through and we actually edited and made the changes to bring out the saturation, the exposure, and the color of this image. Well, what makes a JPEG versus a RAW different? For those of you who are not interested in editing your photos, I would just stick to a RAW photo file format. I would stick to JPEG file format. Reason being is that JPEG is a compressed file. It's a smaller file size, 2 to 6 megabits, has a lower color bit, but you don't necessarily need to edit with a JPEG. The image comes flat, but it comes as is with the color showing as is. You still can edit it with any photo editor, but you're limited because of its color bit. It doesn't have a lot of information to play with, therefore you can't edit too much of the photo. And it always can be transferred faster because JPEGs are smaller and compressed files. Now RAW, on the other hand, is uncompressed, meaning it's larger. File sizes start at 12 to 16 megabytes, but they can go all the way up to 50 to 60 megabytes, depending on your camera and the settings that it has. Typically a higher color bit, 12 to 16 bits are usually what you'll see with RAW files. So what does that really mean is that it can be edited with it can be edited as RAW on some softwares. If you're getting into RAW photography, you want to make sure you're using higher end softwares like Photoshop or Lightroom to edit the images, not necessarily your computer's free editor that it comes with. If you can't do it on that, then you're probably going to have to convert it into a different style of file in order to edit the photo. But if you're someone who's interested in editing your photo, which I will say, 80% of your image, if your image is rated on 100%, 80% of your image comes from the physical camera. The camera's doing all the heavy work and lifting for you. But 20% of the photo comes from editing and comes from changing and making your photo a little bit better through the process. So if you're interested in that aspect, I would probably recommend shooting in the RAW file format. If you're not interested in that, JPEG is more than enough if you just want to send images to your friends or your family or what have you. On the flip side of all that too, when using this software, the nice part too to remember is that a lot of cameras allow you to shoot in both JPEG and RAW and save it to the same SD card. So that's another thing that you could look into as well. Now these are my basics on editing photos. This is how I process my photos. But one thing I will say is that this is the rudimentary and entry level into it. You can get as crazy as you want. You can download new tricks and tools and servers. However, my one piece of recommendation to all of you who are getting into this is that don't be afraid to go back in and re-edit your photos after you've gone through this list. This is my step-through-step on how I do it, but I'm not afraid to admit that after I make changes, I do go back and change things I've already manipulated and changed. It's not just a one and done, I go through these steps and then my photo is complete. There is a process to editing your photos and finding out what works the best for you. These are some images that I like to kind of explain what we're getting when we edit photos. We're not trying to, do crazy things here. I'm not going to show you how to remove a car or how to take away telephone wires in your image. No, the idea of editing, again, is to take a photo that is 80% perfect and complete that other 20%. It could be as simple as lightening up the image if it's too dark, making sure that the hair on the girls shows the highlights and the texture you want it to see, taking away the harsh shadows on the baby's face, or brightening up the purple and the blue of our two people in the first picture. There's a whole list of reasons why we might want to edit our photo, but the idea behind it is that we want to try and get that extra 20% out of the image that's there for us to take. Starting off simple, let's look into some editing softwares. There's all sorts out there. People have different price points and budgets on that. I definitely would recommend do the research, see which one you like the most, but then maybe take a look at the people that are creating things that you want to create, see what they're using. One of the highest or best ways of getting better at art is to copy the people that you admire or you look up to the most. This gives you a nice jumping off point as you start to develop your own style and skill. So crop and clean your image as one of the first starting points when it comes to editing. Start by straightening the alignment of your photo. After that, go through and make sure that you do not have any excess negative or dead space. Spot cleaning should also occur during this time. Adjust your white balance. So white balance doesn't refer to exposure. Rather, it refers to the color of your overall composition. You will have less to play with when shooting in standard JPEG versus the RAW, but some editors will have presets that you can control and change. Others will have temperature and tint. Some will have both. So you can see something like on the left side is more of your standard template where you can just change things based on whatever you want them to be. And other things that you might see are like the temperature and tint scale that you have the ability to tune and play with. The term LUT is something that you might hear if you get a little bit more advanced in the world of editing. And LUTs are very similar, where it's ways for you to update and change the kind of like overall compositions filter, if you will. But again, these are used when we talk about editing your white balance and changing things. The color white exists in nearly everything we photograph. Therefore, white being such a staunch color, it could be manipulated just off of the way that light is coming through. Using white balance, again, you're playing with the overall composition's white adjustment. So keep that in mind as you play and you adjust with this. Now, once I do that, I like to go back, I like to focus in on exposure and contrast. Now, both exposure and contrast are playing with two different things, lights and darks. Exposure plays on the brightness and darkness of a photo. Beware of making a photo too bright because you'll get a muddled or muted look. And you can see that on the right-hand corner with the under normal and overexposed lineup. Contrast, on the other hand, though, plays with dark and light tones. High contrast makes the image start with very dark and light sections. Low contrast will make things look flat and washed out. Always the goal in this case is to aim for the middle on all of this. Now, the big thing to remember, exposure looks at the entirety of the image, plays with the brightness and the darkness, doesn't focus in on the darkest or the lightest points. It just takes the image as a whole and makes it darker or lighter. Where contrast goes into the tones that are the darkest and are the lightest and will lower or raise them based on that. Now, what's fun about both of these, they work in tangent. Playing with contrast takes only the parts of the image that are already darker, very light, and raises or lowers, whereas the exposure plays with everything. So using these two in tandem, you should be able to hit at an image like the dead center. The left-hand image of the mountains is what you're looking at for contrast. That slight play in contrast will make things look a little bit more dramatic or a little bit more cinematic. If you take the two together, you should be able to get a scenario like in the center of the image, or the center picture there, where it looks very dark and washed out, dark and muddy in the before, but when you get to the after, you can actually see all the detail of the rocks as they lay on that shore. Now, when using something like exposure and contrast, one of the things you have access to is called a histogram. When you're shooting on your camera, you might notice this in the top corner or in your viewfinder as you're using the camera. Some people absolutely love this, some people hate it, but here's how you should be reading this. A histogram divides your image into three sections of light. The highest point of luminosity, which is your highlights, the mid-tone, which is that middle range, and then shadows being the darkest. The histogram should show an even distribution of light, and a true proper histogram should look something like this. Midtones being the highest value, highlights being the lowest, and shadows being somewhere in the middle. But sometimes your histogram won't look that properly balanced. And on the left here, you can see an underexposed, overexposed, and proper balanced one. To see that even then the midtones are still the highest, but in this case, the highest points of light are the midpoint, and shadows are very low. Histograms are meant to be educational tools for light distribution so you have a better idea of it. Should they be used and followed to a T? Not necessarily, and that's what this slide exists for. The histogram isn't always going to give you the results that you might need, and if anything, you might need to work against the histogram. The idea, though, is that you can easily see via a chart how your light is being distributed throughout the image. So, after we've gone through and changed the shadows, the darkest and the lightest points of our image, color is always a big part of photography. Now, unless we're shooting in black and white, where we might not necessarily need to focus on it, most photos that we're taking are probably going to have color to them. Similar to exposure and contrast, we have vibrancy and saturation. Vibrancy plays with the brightest colors, and saturation plays with the whole image. So vibrancy will increase or decrease the color intensity in the brightest colors of the image. We can see that on the right-hand side with the dog licking its nose. From -100 to +100, and the original in the middle, you can really see the intensity of the color shift and drop and become more muted when you're at -100. But at +100, it almost doesn't look real, and it looks too cartoonish in a way. Saturation, on the other hand, takes the vibrancy, or takes the color in the entirety of the image and bumps it as high as it can go. And we see that nicely in the right image, on the left picture's right side image, where the colors show more of the rainbow colorway. The grass has this dark, intense green, but these very deep yellow areas as well too. Now, once we get through all of that, the final step is sharpness. And what I might recommend is, at this point, if you're editing your photo and you still feel as though you're not quite there yet, before you go and attempt to play with the sharpness, I'd recommend to go back in and change the things that you changed that didn't come out right. Play with things like your saturation, your exposure, your contrast. Go back in and spot clean if you notice something later on. Make sure your image is perfect for you before moving into this step. To me, this is the finishing effect. It's one of the last things you do after you edit the other parts of your image. Sharpness is going to bring out that definition and depth of field within the image. But too much, though, and you get this halo effect. And I think the fox shows that off a little bit. The fox just doesn't look right. If done properly, you should have something similar to the frogs, where that crispness and that sharpness really comes through and gives the image a pop. Lastly, I get people that ask all the time, what do I do with my images once I'm done? And I still strongly suggest print them and show them off. You spent all this money on a new camera, you spent all this time learning how to take photos, you've done all this work. Don't just save it all to a computer and let it sit and rot. Take pride in your work. Show it off around your house, send it to friends, do something with it. And if you're not a fan of the physical printing of an image, digital frames exist for that reason too. You can easily download the images onto a digital frame and have this kind of stuff saved and ready to go where it's showing. Take pride in your work. Now, again, photography is the most important aspect of what I'm teaching here, but more and more we're seeing a big push in the world of videography. More and more businesses and people, and just people who are interested in video as a whole, are starting to take more and more video and have more pride in that. When it comes to making content or making video or doing stuff for your work or for your free time or whatever it is, there's three main stages within filming and production you're going to go through. Pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre is the initial steps to making your project. I like to look at this as the brainstorm session. You're sitting down, you're writing your thoughts, your plans. Where are we going to film? What am I going to film? What kind of shots am I looking to take? Is there a motion I might want to do? Is there someone I'm trying to emulate? What equipment do I need? Etc. Production is then you actually going out and taking all of those notes from pre-production and putting them into work. If you made a script and you confidently planned everything out in pre-production should move very smoothly and effortlessly because you already have that base understanding of what you're going to do. And then post-production is crunch time. That's your ability to take everything you just did and put it together for the final piece. Again, whether it's a social media video, something you're making to have for your friend's advertisement campaign, maybe a video you're putting together for grandma so that she can see everybody for Christmas. Whatever it might be, that's what you're looking at when it comes to this. Three very important settings to remember on your camera: video resolution, ratios, and frames per second. We've all heard the term of video resolution and the quality of video control on videos. However, what does it really stand for? And it comes down to the pixels. They've taken the amount of pixels going in the vertical direction and they multiplied that by the amount of pixels going in the horizontal direction. From there, then, they divide it by the diagonal size of the TV. And that's how we're able to get 8K, 4K, Full HD, and standard definition. Your camera then utilizes that many pixels when shooting to optimize the quality for those styles of TV or monitors. For the most part, if you're watching the news or television today, that's in standard HD. If you're streaming movies on Netflix or Hulu, you're probably watching it in 4K. And for all conversational points of view right now, there is really nothing being created in 8K. Televisions are coming out in the 8K quality, and that's more of a future-proofing mechanism. It does upscale your videos, but keep that in mind when shooting. It's fantastic that people are trying to shoot with 8K videos and take the best quality possible. But it's also important to remember what camera you're using, who your audience is, what equipment they're going to use to watch what you make. So choose your video resolution based on who your audience is and where this is going. I'd say for most people, 4K and HD are going to be plenty. Ratios works a little bit differently, but in a similar boat. You're choosing the size of which your video is going to be recorded off the sensor. Something like the 4:3 ratio size is going to utilize the entirety of the sensor. Something like the 3:2 is a little bit smaller. 16:9, you're going to get those black bars on there. And if you're doing something for an Instagram or a Facebook where you might only get a square, a 1:1 ratio might be more than enough for you to utilize. Lastly, frames per second. Frames per second, if you think about this, all videos are a compilation of photos stacked on top of each other. One of the very first videos ever recorded was a horse running through a finish line. Played back, all that is multiple photos of the horse as it's running through the finish line, then played back at a speed at which it looks like the horse is galloping. Thinking about it in that sense, that is all video is today. If you watch the news, most news channels are shooting in 12 to 24 frames a second, meaning that for each second that passes by, 24 pictures or 12 pictures are being taken and then used and played at a speed that then shows video. The lesser amount of frames we have, the more simple the video should be. The news, for example, uses 12 to 24 frames a second. When you're watching action movies or slow motion scenes, they're using a higher frame rate, closer to 60 or 120. This ensures smoothness in the video and less choppiness, especially when things are slowed down and used for slow motion. So again, know what you're recording to then pick these 3 settings appropriately based on what it is your final result is going to be. If you've got things that are moving with a lot of motion, you're probably going to want to use a higher frames per second. If you are filming something for Instagram or Facebook, maybe a new different ratio style might be appropriate. And if this video is for Nana and you're trying to just make it for the holidays, nobody but her is going to watch it and she doesn't have a very good TV, then HD or standard definition might be more than enough for her. The 3 most important aspects, though, of filming, the quality side put away, is your camera quality, or your camera, your lighting, and your audio. Having a camera that shoots appropriately for the content you are trying to make, it doesn't have to be movie quality, but it has to work for your brand, your page, your project, whatever it might be. Lighting. Choose a lighting method that works well for you. We're going to talk about different lights that I might recommend, and then audio quality. If all 3 of these aspects of your video are less than desirable, nobody's going to care about what you're making. As long as 2 of these are good or better, then there will be hope for whatever content you're trying to make. Keep that in mind. In a perfect world, we would call this studio lighting, or the 3-light lighting method. There's always going to be a key light. The key light is the main one that hits on the subject as we're recording or shooting a photo. The fill light then comes in and hits all the spots that the key light could not get. The backlight then takes away the background and creates more separation between the background and the foreground, giving us our subject matter a little bit more off of the background. Just making sure things don't look compressed or flat. This is the perfect lighting method if we could use this. For most of us, though, we're not going to be shooting in a studio situation. Probably might not even have lights like this. If you're at home and you're trying to accomplish something like this, using your lamps from around the house, you could easily accomplish a 3-point lighting system. If you have a couple different flashlights and you could set those up, that's another way of setting up the 3-point lighting method, which might help illuminate for whatever your video or project is, better than if you were to just take a light and put it on one section. If you can create this 3-light pattern, it really is going to help. But for those of you out there who are saying this is too big or you don't have the means for this, there is alternative lighting. On-camera flashes exist. You should definitely look into one of those. Light blocks or LED light squares are fantastic as well too. And ring lights being one of the more popular ones during COVID. Still popular now, but not nearly as popular as they once were. Great options for alternative lighting to give us strong, confident light in our video. Again, more light is always better than no light. Last thing too, I don't have on there, is sunlight. Sunlight is your friend. Utilize it as best as you can. We can make something darker. It's hard to make something lighter in post. Microphones are a great addition into your camera arsenal. One thing to keep in mind is that all cameras have a built-in microphone if they shoot video. But most camera microphones are really bad. Similar in the sense to TVs. If you buy a TV nowadays, you might notice that the sound quality on the TV is bad. Well, that's only because they put so much focus and power into the TV's presentation of how the picture looks that the sound quality is typically an afterthought, and a sound bar is always recommended for better sound quality. Cameras are no different. Microphones exist for a better audio recording experience. So things like on-camera microphones, like a shotgun mic or a boom mic, if you've got the extra manpower for it, are great additional pieces. Things like the wireless mic are awesome too. They can be connected to your cell phone as well. And those wireless mics typically allow you to use a lav mic, which if you haven't used a lav mic is a great way to hide and keep hidden the microphone that you're using to record. Much more professional setup and look in general. Stabilizing the shot. It's an important aspect. You talk about the lighting quality, the microphone quality. You can look through the different camera specs and see which camera fits your needs, but making sure you have a good stationary grip on the camera, whether you're running, gunning, or you're recording from the sidelines, you want to make sure you have the right equipment for that. In the world of tripods, you're typically going to see these three. A monopod, which is a singular leg tripod. Your still photo tripod or ball head joint tripod offers you some mobility, but for the most part, a more stationary and still experience. And then finally, the video tripod. Your ability to pan, tilt, and roll, just like a standard professional movie camera would do. On top of that, too, most of these have the ability for you to convert to wheels, which if you're doing something in a banquet hall or you're rolling around a smooth surface, would offer a lot of stability, but at the same time, too, really good portability and movement. Gimbals. For those of you out there who are worried about shaky videos, you're moving around a lot, you're walking, you might be interested in a gimbal. Now, gimbals can range in prices all over the place. Most start at around $400 to $500, and then they can go all the way up into the multiple thousands, depending on what you're looking at. Single-handed gimbals are the most common, popular, and probably the easiest for a beginner to use. They sell them in sizes that are all different based on the camera that you're using. The smaller the camera, the smaller the gimbal can be. The larger the camera, the bigger the gimbal should be. Now, if a single-handed isn't enough, two-handed exists. Now, two-handed is typically a two-person operation. Someone will be monitoring a screen of some sort and watching as you're moving and running around. And then lastly, the gimbal stabilizer vest. This is more for the professional who's carrying, let's say a 70 or 80 pound camera. This is for something that's a bigger setup. And the only reason being is that it takes the stress off the back and your arms as you're using it with this gimbal vest or with this whole kind of setup. That is all I have for you guys. So relatively quick class. This was the advanced cameras. I just want to give everybody an update. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving, so we will not be having our Beyond the Traditional Camera class. Next Thursday instead, we will have no class. So our class is going to be Monday the 24th. So this upcoming Monday, we're going to do Beyond the Traditional Camera. For those of you interested in coming, we are stepping away from DSLR mirrorless cameras. We're now talking about more specialty pieces. Things like drones, action cameras, 360 cameras, and camcorders/cinema cameras. That's what we're going to be focusing in on next week, which will be on Monday the 24th. And if anybody has any questions online, now is your time. Chat away, ask any questions that you have, and if you have any questions as well, by all means.
All right. The squares, you're talking about that third line?
Yes.
How do I get that?
On the camera?
Yeah.
So if you go into your settings, usually in here they have a display section. Let's turn this back on. So let's see. So if we go and click display, it's not showing on there. So we got to go into settings. So if we go to menu,
I'm trying to use that tool with my pets, with my dogs.
yeah,
Try to,
it's I keep mine on my camera, and I like it a lot. Do this. I'll shoot the facility myself.
I know on the cell phone, I think it had that option. I don't know how to do it on that.
Okay. So it's under shooting display. So on the third menu option, Center number 9, click on that. Grid line display on, and then boom.
Cool.
Should have all grids. So yeah, we call it the rule of thirds. Goal is always if you can hit it in the circle sections on there, that's gonna help them elevate the photo a little bit. It's a nice little like starting point for it. As you start to kind of progress, you'll probably get away from it. There's more complicated ones you can get into. But I like rule of thirds to start with because it opens the gate if you're interested in like these fundamental photography pieces that people always talk about. So.
Like when I get pictures of mine, I try to do both Saturday.
Yeah.
And since that was kind of like, you know, black and white area, I could shoot some black and white.
Yeah.
Kind of get them like a nostalgic look.
Yeah.
You know, say we find a nice old car, like an old Cadillac, it'd be nice to get that. You know, that 60s cinema, I don't know how to say it.
So here, you can definitely do that. So on the top here, you've got photo, video, S&Q. S&Q is slow and quick, so I'd probably stay away from that one. But if you rotate to the middle, now you're on video. If you keep it there, you're on photo. So if I click on FN, let's see. There's a way to do it. Steady shots.
Experience.
So right now you're on a setting where it won't let you play with it, but if you can work on getting away from automatic, there is a way for you to actually go through and play with the filters on here, so you can add like other colors and do that stuff. So,
Yeah. Definitely gonna mess with it, man. I know I got vacation time coming.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely the best time to do it.
Yeah.
I tell everybody in one of my classes specifically, I'm like, if you're going on vacation or you're planning a trip or you're doing anything, bring the camera with you. You won't ever regret it. I'm like, it's one extra piece you have to take with you, but by doing it, it makes a world of difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely want to use a Saturday.
Yeah.
Take pictures of some cool cars and videotape him.
Definitely start with the photo, and then when you're ready to switch to video, just move it over one click. And that'll be the easiest way to get started with it.
That one, yeah, so, okay, yeah. So I cannot take a picture while I'm shooting video?
No, that's the one thing, only one camera company in the world does that, and it's really frustrating. The technology's in there. It's just that for whatever reason, when they code it with their software, they just don't do it.
That would be kind of cool.
I know. Panasonic's the only one that we found that can do it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna get into it now. I'm gonna want to do a good job Saturday for me. But the GoPro, that GoPro is kind of like idiot-proof for me. I kind of miss it.
I'm telling you, once you start using this, you'll see how simple it is. Especially with your photo button being there, your video button being there. Once you're ready to go, you just hit go, and then you're good to go.
Cool. That gimbal thing, what do you think? I should try it or?
I would start. I mean, it's not till Saturday, so if you got time tomorrow, I would just start practicing with some videos. Walk around, see how stable the shot is. If you feel like it really isn't, then I'd come in and take a look at one. But for the most part, I feel like people who use gimbals, they hit a certain point where they're like, I need it, and it is a learning curve. There is a bunch to learn with that. I'd hate for you to get it, and then I don't know if you'd be ready by Saturday to start using that. Because it took me like about a week just for myself to get used to using one, and I'd rarely touch a gimbal. I have there's this cool brand called Small Rig, and they make all these accessories for you to do video, and I actually own, it's a cage that goes around my camera and has a grip on both sides, and when I'm shooting video, that's what I use. So I pan and tilt that way.
Cool.
So.
Cool. And I might want to get a light, because in that place, it was kind of dark.
Yeah. Say if you got time, check with the guys downstairs. Ask them about there's a light cube that you can get. It's by ProMaster. It's like an RGB light. Charges USB-C and it goes right on the top here. But it's probably about this big and it offers a lot of light. So that would be nice on top of there. So as you're recording and doing stuff, you'd have the light blaring on whatever you need.
Yeah, so I was looking, I was like, oh man, it seemed kind of dark in there.
Yeah.
It was real dark in that restaurant. It was dark. Light.
Yeah.
It was really crazy in there, man.
Yeah. Ask the guys downstairs about the light bricks. They'll know a little bit more about those too.
Yeah, so we'll get it all down, over here.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Good seeing you.
Yep.
I'm taking off now after this, but my guy's downstairs taking care of it. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Hope I see you for the next month's class. I know next week kind of is a different class because it's a beyond the traditional one. We're going to talk about standard cameras, but you can leave that here. I'll fill that out for you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I want to learn.
Yeah, please come on
I
in.
just want to keep.
Keep it sharp. I get it.
And I a friend did me for Chicago. He retired. He did a residence the pictures.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, I would love to get into that. That'd be fun.
So basically, he was on. He wakes up, go to the station,
Yeah.
goes in the back room.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta go.
Yeah, we need you now. Yeah.
I'm like, man, what a job.
What a good shot, yeah.
You know, it's so weird now. The other guy that took his place, I met him a couple times. And I don't know if you heard it on the news, one of our guys got shot over at 35th and King.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so the other guy, Stan, called me, hey man, you want to see some pictures of him?
Jeez,
The guy
yeah.
that got shot.
Yeah.
And now he's supposed to be moving to the Marine Division.
Okay. Wow. That's incredible. It's amazing where that stuff can take you.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Now I want to make work that out, right? And I'll do some pictures for you guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it.
All right, thank you.
Good luck. Absolutely. Enjoy. All right, for everybody else watching at home, thank you guys for being a part of this. As always, today was the third class of the month. Next week, Monday, 11/24, we're going to do the Beyond the Traditional Camera class. And again, that's because Thanksgiving is this upcoming Thursday, everybody. December will probably be something similar because it looks like Christmas Day is also on a Thursday. But we'll talk more about that once we get there. Guys, thanks for joining. As always, love to hear from y'all. Happy holidays to all of you who celebrate, and I will see everybody on the next week on the 24th for Beyond the Traditional Camera. Take care.